Well, Liberation Day has officially come and gone. Donald Trump has released his plan regarding tariffs, and the world has responded. Everybody from Congress, which, by the way, some members of our Congress are now attempting to sabotage those tariffs. I got a lot to share with you regarding that. And the EU is warning of immense consequences. And quite frankly, this report, I'm going to encourage you guys to listen to in its entirety. I'm probably going to go a little longer than normal, but there is some things that I want to tell you regarding these tariffs. What are we going to see in the very near future, but what is eventually going to happen, and what is the good that is going to come out of it? Because there are a lot of good things that are going to happen, but there is going to be temporary pain economically. And that's how it has to happen with what is going on with our economy. But I think it is going to be very short-lived. I've got a lot to share with you. But before I get in, I want to dispel a rumor that is out there. Elon Musk, it's been going around that him and Donald Trump both have publicly stated that Elon Musk is going to depart from the Department of Government Efficacy. As you can see, Elon Musk has responded to that and said that that is fake news. So don't listen to the rumors going on in mainstream media. As far as we know, he plans to stay in the Department of Government Efficacy with Doge. So there's that. But with that, let's dive into this tariff war that has obviously gone global. Let's start first with this. This is on LA Times. Trump declares Liberation Day and announces sweeping global tariffs on friend and foe alike. Trump announced sweeping global tariffs on Wednesday, a risky move that he vowed would lure manufacturing back to the U.S., but which their experts warned could upend the global economy. In a Rose Garden speech, Trump said the U.S. would begin applying a universal baseline tariff of 10%, right, on imported goods from all foreign countries. Several dozens of countries that he said unfairly tax American goods will face additional tariffs. He said with China being slapped with another 34% tariffs, the EU a 20% tariff, and India a 26% tariff. He said the new tariffs represent a turning point globally for us. He said on Wednesday, which he dubbed Liberation Day, would forever be remembered as the day that American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. And I agree with that statement. He further goes on, our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for over 50 years. It's not going to happen anymore, but it is not going to happen anymore. This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our Declaration of Economic Independence. He accused nations the world over, friend and foe alike, of having looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered the United States of America, which they absolutely have. Now, before I dive into that, I want to give a quick shout out to my sponsor, LisaHavenGold.com. Gold right now is up 46%, doubling the S&P 500 and NASDAQ. This isn't just another rally. In fact, global reserves are shifting as investors rush to secure physical gold, which is creating a massive gap. Gold is vanishing from the market right now, which is why I want to encourage you to buy, because you still have a chance to do that. And you can do that right now by calling 1-877-646-5347. Let them know Lisa Haven sent you, because they are giving away this 1/10 ounce gold coin that you see on the screen here with any approved plan. And if you want a free investment guide, fill out that information, click get my free guide, and they're going to send you that free gold and silver investment guide. I highly encourage you to do that now, especially in light of the economy. But if you want more information, click that more button or click the link in the description box below. And by the way, there is always a risk to investing. There's never a guarantee. But with that, regarding Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs, right? As stated in the article I read prior, he promised like a 10%, basically for the most part across the board. But outside of that, he promised also reciprocal tariffs. Now, he actually published all the numbers per each state, and per each country on the White House X page here, and I'm going to blow some of these charts up. But as you can see, let's just start with China at the top. We're about 50%. So Donald Trump didn't go the full reciprocal, because the full reciprocal for China would have been 67.67. For EU, it would have been 39.39. But what he did instead, I guess, as a starting point, is he went about 50%. He goes, okay, if you're charging us 67, we're going to be 34. You're charging us 39, we'll be about 20. But you can see a majority of the countries are 10 and 10, 10 and 10, 10 and 10. You can see some of those, including Ukraine, but a lot of these are 10. And so these are all the different countries I'm flashing on the screen and the tariffs that have been promised by Donald Trump. So thus far, those are the numbers. Now, who is missing from the list? That would be Canada and Mexico. And I'm going to tell you the reason for that, but this is on kjzz.org. Most goods from Canada and Mexico remain exempt as Trump levies new tariffs around the world. Why is that the case? Well, this exemption comes after a series of trade tensions between the United States and Canada, right? In February of this year, the United States imposed a 10% tariff on Canadian energy imports and a 25% on other Canadian goods, prompting Canada to respond with its own tariffs on American imports. As a result of that, it led to temporary suspensions and adjustments on these tariffs. So there were certain agreements made, there were certain suspensions made between the countries, and that is why you're not currently seeing those at this time. But to give you an idea of what Donald Trump is really after and what is going on here, I wanted to show you guys this chart. And this is on the balanceeconomy.com, but it's the U.S. imports and exports, the components and statistics. And this was updated in 2022. But here's the idea of what is going on with our import and exports. And you can see this picture here. You can see right now we are bringing into the country over $3 trillion of goods. That includes cars, shoes, cell phones, microchips, pharmaceutical, which, by the way, we get a lot of our pharmaceutical products from China, which, God forbid, we go to war with the country. We're in a whole lot of trouble. This is one of the reasons why Donald Trump is trying to bring manufacturing back into the country. So $3 trillion coming into the country. And meanwhile, we're only exporting 2.5 trillion goods. That's a significant difference, by the way. And to give you an idea of what we are importing versus exporting, you can see cars, computers, medical treatments, broadcasting, crude oil, and mainly from these countries as of now, Mexico and Canada have been exempt. So the stuff coming from China, Germany, and Japan, we get a lot of stuff coming in from them. Those are the things that you are going to see go up, I believe, temporarily. Export-wise, here's what we're exporting here: cars, circuits, gas, petroleum. And again, the same 5 countries are the same top 5 versus imports and exports. So that gives you an idea of what we can see financially. Now, speaking of financially, here's some articles on that. CNBC.com, Trump's tariffs risk a global trade war as leaders are planning their next steps. This is absolutely correct. Yes, we have ignited a global trade war, whatever you want to call it, but it's because we have been unfairly treated. As Donald Trump says it, we have been raped and pillaged by other countries regarding that. And this is what he's trying to even out. And I totally understand that, especially from a business perspective. We also have this, and this is on express.co.uk. Donald Trump's tariffs own goal, as they could cost the U.S. household up to $4,200 a year. It could. I'm not saying it will, but it could. And I'm going to get to the reason why I don't think it's going to go that high. And that is because countries are already responding and lowering their tariffs on America, right? So yes, and again, we have to remember, before I kind of get into more of this, and I'm all for what Donald Trump is doing, what Donald Trump and his administration is doing. Here's the thing. If we send a car to China, right, they're charging 67 some odd percent. So that car is 67, whatever the percent was, right? And now if we get a car from China, it used to be, and I don't know what the old number was before he updated it. Say it was 10% prior. I'm grabbing this number out of my butt, but you would have a car from China, it would have a 10% increase based off the tariffs. And Donald Trump has now increased that. I believe it was 34. I've got to go back to that chart and check it out. Yeah, so we're 34 and 67. So now if we get a car in from China, it has 37% higher rate attached to that car. So yes, those cars are going to go up. But the whole precipice behind this is because here's what's going to happen. Other countries are going to say, we I don't know about this massive increase. So let's bring more in-house to the United States of America, causing us to increase our manufacturing in our country. More jobs will come, more stuff will start happening in the United States. So they're going to start bringing some of those jobs potentially here, opening offices here, which some already have, and they're increasing production. So some of these car companies that are stationed here in America are like, oh, let's start increasing there versus in China and other countries, because then we don't have to pay that tariff that Donald Trump has imposed. So it completely builds up the Make America Great Again agenda. But in the temporary, things could be higher, but we have to think long term, especially when our country is in the amount of massive debt that we are. He wants to flip that exporting versus importing chart that I showed you just a little bit ago. And he wants our exports to be higher than our imports. Why? Because we will flourish as a country in the long run. So that's my forte on that. And that's why, okay, temporary pain, long-term gain. And we're talking about very long-term prosperous gain in the long run. He's a good businessman, I believe, at doing that. And then we also had this happen. But this is, again, I believe, only going to be, it's gonna happen for a little while. But CBS News, Dow plunges more than 1,500 points as stocks react to tariff shock, which, by the way, is one of the reasons I have Noble Gold, LisaHavenGold.com, as an investor, because hopefully you guys have been diversifying your profiles. Just saying. But outside of that, we also have iPhones could potentially go up. They're obviously impacted by the tariffs as well. Now, the good news is I believe a lot of that is not going to be very long-lived. Why? Because countries are already responding by saying, okay, we'll make changes to our tariffs. Which means if they change their tariffs and move them lower, that means more people in their countries are going to start buying American goods, because our goods will go down in cost, right? But here's some of the countries that have already responded. This is on Reuters. Israel eliminates remaining tariffs on U.S. goods ahead of Trump move. Huge move by Israel. They should have done that a long time ago, considering they're one of our allies. But not just Israel. We also have this on the Economic Times. Vietnam to cut tariffs on U.S. imports as Trump tariff decision looms. Then we also have India, U.S. trade deal. Modi government eyes tariff cuts on more than half of U.S. imports worth $23 billion. And then we also have Swiss minister stretches country's contribution to U.S. to avoid Trump's tariffs. So there are already actions taking place by countries saying, all right, fair's fair. You're right, Donald Trump. Let's do this. Let's work with you. Now, there are other countries who are screaming of immense consequences and the world's going to implode and global everything's going to go. Well, that's because they want to continue to rape and pillage our country with tariffs. And that is what they're doing. And they don't want to let go. Some of those are found here. And this is on Zero Hedge article. Immense consequences. EU warns of countermeasures as world leaders respond to U.S. tariffs. The EU will unveil countermeasures to U.S. President Donald Trump's latest tariffs if negotiations with the White House stall. EU Commissioner President European Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen said on April 2nd as leaders around the world responded to the new levies. And here's what she said specifically. The global economy will massively suffer, the EU chief said. Uncertainty will spiral and trigger the rise of further protectionism. The consequences will be dire for millions of people around the globe. I agree with Trump that others are taking unfair advantage of the current rules. Well, no, Sherlock. And I'm ready to support any efforts to make the global trading system fit for the realities of the global economy. But I want to be clear, reaching for tariffs as your first and last tool will not fix it. This is why, from the outset, we have always been ready to negotiate with the U.S. to remove any remaining barriers to transatlantic trade, she said. At the same time, we're preparing to respond. Now, she said the EU is finalizing a package of countermeasures in response to tariffs on steel, referencing the $26 billion euro package of tariffs the EU plans to impose on some American goods this month after Trump's U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs took place on March 12th. And so she says we're preparing further countermeasures to protect our interests if our negotiations fail. In other words, they're under negotiations. Again, you can see some of the charts here. The European Union We're currently at 39% that they're charging us. Trump raised it up to 20%. That is half of what they're doing. And they're telling us that, oh, the world's going to implode. Why? Because suddenly it's going to cost more to bring stuff to our country. I think fair is fair, and I think that Donald Trump is on the right direction. But the article goes on to list a couple other world leaders' responses. Here's the Swedish prime minister, and he expresses deep regret. But here's what he says. We don't want growing trade barriers. We don't want a trade war. That would make our populations poorer and the world more dangerous in the long run. But Sweden and the Swedish government are well prepared for what's happening. We stand on solid economic ground with world-class public finances. So they're not really telling us exactly what they're going to do. Now, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney vowed to fight the tariffs with countermeasures and build the strongest economy in the G7 speech. Then we also have the Irish Prime Minister, right? And he says, my priority and that of the government is to protect Irish jobs and our economy, he said. So he didn't really state exactly where he wanted to go with that. But the British Prime Minister said this: negotiations on an economic prosperity deal, one that strengthens our existing trade relationships, they continued. So negotiating. Italian Prime Minister Meloni said her administration will do everything they can to work towards an agreement with the U.S. So some of these are good, right? They want to negotiate. They want to talk. So now they're finally coming to the table in order to avoid a trade war. And of course, Emmanuel Macron said he will meet with representatives from business sectors that are hit by the new taxes. So the good news is most of these countries are up to negotiating, right? Most of them are. They're wanting to negotiate. They want to talk. They want to see what the deals are and what's going on. So this is all good news. And the quicker that we can negotiate with these countries, the shorter term that paying on these tariffs we will feel as the American people. But in the long run, it is going to be much better. We're going to be more prosperous. We're going to make more money. We are going to be a far better economy once this little trade war is finally ended. And in the end, I think we could see lower tariffs on both ends, both imports and exports. And that is what some of these countries are doing. They're like, all right, like for like, we'll charge you the same as you're charging us. We literally pay more in tariffs than any other country. So if we want to send stuff out, we get charged way more than anyone. And that's the idea. Now, speaking of these tariffs, there's some Senate Republicans, and I hate to say Rand Paul is one of them, and he's one of my favorites, but I disagree with him on this, that are trying to sabotage at least what Donald Trump has done with tariffs in Canada. Senate votes to sabotage President Trump's Canadian tariffs policy, with 4 Republicans casting the decisive yes vote. Now, here's the deal. We already kind of came to somewhat of agreement with Canada, and they're basically sabotaging that. It's like Canada now can say, oh, we're just going to do whatever the hell we want to do because Congress agrees with me. But a handful of Senate Republicans joined Democrats to vote this evening on legislation rescinding tariffs on Canadian goods, a startling rebuke of President Trump. The final vote, 51-48. And these are the 4. Lisa Murkowski, no shock there. Mitch McConnell, no shock there. And Susan Collins, no shock there. But Rand Paul, that's a little concerning. But anyway, as Fox News previously reported, leftist Senator Tim Kaine sponsored a joint resolution that would terminate the national emergency Trump declared regarding illicit drugs and Canada. Trump has argued that tariffs are necessary to curb the drug flow and rebalance the unfair trading relationship between the two countries. While the passage does not mean the tariffs will evaporate, considering the House is unlikely to ever vote on the measure, voting against Canadian tariffs handed the Democrats a very powerful talking point and humiliated Donald Trump in the process. In fact, Trump has responded to this, and he says regarding the 4, right? He goes, we will hopefully get on the Republican. He's saying, okay, the 4 of you that voted for it, please get back on the Republican bandwagon, right? And instead of fighting for Democrats, or let me just read it. Mitch McConnell of Canada, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Rand Paul of Kentucky will hopefully get on the Republican bandwagon for a change and fight the Democrats' wild and fragrant push to penalize Canada for the sale into our country of large amounts of fentanyl by tariffing the value of this horrible and deadly drug in order to make it more costly to distribute and buy. They are playing with the lives of the American people and right into the hands of the radical left Democrats and cartels. The Senate bill is just a ploy of the Dems to show and expose the weakness of certain Republicans, mainly these four, in that it is not going anywhere because the House will never approve it, and I, as your president, will never sign it. Why are they allowing fentanyl to pour in our country unchecked and without penalty? What's wrong with them other than Trump derangement syndrome? You can kind of read the rest there. But that's what's going on. So there's a little bit of a sabotage, if you will, happening and taking place by our Republicans. So with all that, I know I shared and went longer than normal, but there was an awful lot to share with you regarding this. And I know that you probably had lots of questions on what's going on with these tariffs and what it's going to mean for us. I can't wait, by the way, to hear your comments and concerns. I really want to hear all of them. What do you think about the tariffs? What's your take on it? Are you in alignment with me? Do you see the benefits of it? And these are all things I'd love to hear you. I'm definitely going to read it. And by the way, I want to encourage all of you, get to restrictedrepublic.com. Justice Knight just put out a very huge report today, exclusive. We've got a lot of exclusive content. You kind of see them on the screen there. And I want you to go over there and check it out because you're going to get more of the full story there than you are here on YouTube. And we do that for a very reason, not necessarily a financial one, though. There is the financial incentive of joining, which helps us continue to do what we're going to do, but also because we are very limited. Anyhow, with that, get to restrictedrepublic.com, use the coupon code Lisa and the number 5 to get it for $5 per month. Anyhow, I love you all. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.